She needs love, some girls need love. Girls can't never say they want it. Girls can't never say how. Girls can't never say they need it. Girls can't never say nah, nah. Girls can't never say they want it. Girls can't never say how. Girls can't never say they need it. Girls can't never say nah. Oh nah. Give it to me like you need it, baby. Want you to hear me screaming, have it breathing. I don't need a reason, baby. I want it till you get right. I can get it to you right, baby. I wanna be healing. I can be real good. Please don't get these feelings. Hey, I need some love.
Greetings, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming out on this late night rising. Listen here, I'm up late and I don't know, I've just been in like the late night talk show host mode here lately. And I had to tell my husband, I was like, honey, I was like, for some reason I'm thinking like not really starting like right at midnight. I said like if I happen to wake up in the late night hour, would you mind if I did like a late night show? He was like, no, go ahead, do you. That's what you like to do. So we are here now. So what we are going to discuss tonight is a Detroit man charged in the murder of 13-year-old Naziah Harris. Justice for Naziah, and this is going to be a true crime edition. In this video, we delve into the harrowing case of 13-year-old Naziah Harris, who went missing in Detroit on January 9th, 2024. Jarvis Butts, a 42-year-old man from Detroit, faces serious charges, including first-degree premeditated murder and second-degree criminal sexual conduct. The court proceedings reveal a disturbing narrative of an inappropriate relationship between Butts and Naziah. Judge Aliyah Sabree's poignant remarks during the hearing highlight the tragic neglect Naziah experienced and the profound impact of this case on the community. Join us as we explore the details surrounding this case and the ongoing search for justice. Let's have a moment of silence for Naziah. This will be a call-in show, so if you all want to call in, feel free to definitely do that. Let me go ahead and bring up our screen. And, oh, geez, this is a lot. When you talk about just the story in general, it's... Okay, so I think I'm going to start off with Mr. Butt's sister, because his sister end up giving testimony in this trial. So without further ado, give me one moment. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the audio of this court case. And actually, let me go ahead and open that up a little bit more so we all can see. All right, so okay, here we are. All right, thank you. Oh, hey, views of you. How are you doing? Great to see you. We're actually going to be going over this case of the 13-year-old girl that went missing in Detroit. And now they are in court. And here we are with what's going on in court. It's such a tragedy. And this is why it's so important to invest into air tags, and even having what is it called? The location to where you can identify your child on their phone. Viewers View says, hey, next case with Queen Tulsa, and chat. Thumbs up and share. Thank you so much, beautiful. I appreciate you. All right, y'all, let's get into it.
Good afternoon. Could you please state your name for the record?
Aliyah Butts,
And how old are you, Ms. Butts?
46.
And do you know someone named Jarvis Butts?
Yes,
And how is it that you know him?
he's my brother.
Okay. And how old is Jarvis Butts?
42.
And do you know his birthday?
Yes.
When's his birthday?
November 21st, 1982.
And do you see Jarvis Butts in the courtroom today?
Okay, here, let me go ahead and pause. I'm gonna acknowledge us. You said, okay, I heard about it. Thanks for sharing this. You're right. Um, and then you said, right. Yeah, I mean, I gotta oh my goodness. I'm just like on this tangent right now and I just could not sleep. I mean, as much as I tried to go to sleep, but this case would not let me go to sleep. But I want to give you guys a backstory. So this was her auntie's boyfriend, right? So he was her uncle. He was parading her around like he was her niece. Now, this is his sister that's on the stand right now. And pretty much she's going to give testimony saying, she was at the shop that day. She saw what looked like Naziah. And you know, it just I want y'all to get y'all's own opinion on it, but I'm gonna try not to interrupt as much as I can't. Hey, CEO La Boss Lady. But yeah, let's get into this case and let's review. And type it in the chat. If it's something that you're sounding off on, I can go back in the chat and then we can read it when I come off a pause. I
I saw him walking in.
Okay. And can you point to him and tell me the color of the clothing that he's wearing?
He has on, I believe it's dark green shirt. He's sitting behind the lady to the side of you.
And Your Honor, with the record reflected when it says identified the defendant in this case?
So reflective. And just to be clear, you said I saw him walking in. You saw him when you were walking in or when he was walking in?
When I was walking in just now.
Thank you.
And Ms. Butts, where did you know Jarvis to work?
He worked at a shop on Warren and F, called Frank's, and then he moved to a shop on Hopper and Connors. I don't know the name of it.
And Ms. Butts, do you remember talking to Detroit police back on February 26, 2024?
Yes,
And what's the reason that you went and talked to Detroit police?
I had reason to believe that I saw Naziah the day she went missing.
Tell me about that. What makes you believe that you saw Naziah on the day she went missing?
Where do you want me to start this off?
So, from the very beginning, where is it that you think you saw Naziah?
At the shop on Harbor and Connors.
Okay, and whose shop is that?
My brother Jarvis Butts and his partner.
Okay. What's the reason you were at your brother's shop that day?
Something was wrong with the car that I was driving, and I just needed him to check it out to make sure it was safe for me to drive.
Do you recall about what time did you go to Jarvis's shop that day?
About 4 p.m., give or take a few minutes.
Okay, and around what time did you leave?
Somewhere between 6 and 6:30.
Okay. And what is it that you noticed while you were at the shop?
So it's a two car, like garage. So I was sitting outside of the shop in my car because they were working on another car on the inside. As I sat there for the time that I was there, I kept seeing a little girl get in and out of his truck, going to the gas station and going back to his car.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you right there. Whose car are we talking about?
My brother.
Okay, and what kind of car was it?
I believe the Cadillac Escalade.
Okay, do you remember what color?
Kind of like a pearl white, off white cream color.
Okay, and you described this as a two garage shop.
Yes.
Okay, and I want to approach with people's Exhibit 7.
Okay.
Now, Ms. Butts, do you recognize what is it we're looking at in People's Exhibit 7?
Yes.
Okay, what is that?
That is the shop
Okay.
right in the middle.
And where at were you parked when you saw someone getting in and out of Jarvis's truck?
In front of the car doors of the garage right here, I was parked facing, I don't know what direction it is, but going towards garage. I was like in front, but outside.
Okay, so you were kind of parked parallel with the road?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you draw a T where your truck was?
My car?
Yeah, your car was.
Can I?
Yes. And then put an arrow the way you were facing. And where is it where that Jarvis's truck was? Just put a J where Jarvis's truck was. And what way was his truck facing?
It was facing my direction, so the front was
Towards you. Okay, so put an arrow for that direction. Okay. Thank you. Now, do you get a look at this little girl that you see getting in and out of his car?
I saw her, as she was walking. I never saw her face.
Did you see any clothing?
I did.
Okay. Did anything about the clothing stick out to you that you remember?
I just remember her having on a colorful jacket.
And what door, which side do you remember seeing her getting in and out of Jarvis's truck? Or did it change?
I don't really remember.
Okay, that's okay. So you said you mostly remember a jacket, a colorful jacket.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm going to show you what's marked as People's Exhibit 2, which is already admitted, and People's Proposed Exhibit 10. You under my approach?
Yes.
Handing you what's marked as People's Exhibits 2 and 10. Okay. Do you recognize anything in those photos?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
What is it that you recognize?
Right here, this jacket.
And for the record, you're pointing up in channel 1, and you recognize this like pink colorful jacket?
Yes.
Okay. And that's in People's Exhibit 10? Your Honor, I move for the admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 10 as Exhibit 10. Is that a fair and accurate depiction of the jacket that you saw that day?
Yes.
I move for the proposed People's Exhibit 10.
Any objection?
No objection.
Okay, it'll be admitted as People's Exhibit 10.
And in People's 2, is that also, where is the what you recognize as People's Exhibit 2?
It looks like channel 2 here, maybe.
Okay, facing the back?
Yeah.
Okay. And you recognize the jacket in this photo too, right? Yes.
It's a little blurry, but it looks the same.
Okay. And what about in channel 1 of Exhibit 2?
It would be this one right here.
Okay, and it's fair to say that's the back of a jacket? Or it seems to be the back of a jacket? Okay, thank you. And you said that you saw this little girl with this jacket on getting in and out and going into the gas station?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know who this little girl was at the time?
No.
Okay. Is there a time that you ever get out of your car?
Yes.
And what do?
I needed to use the restroom, so I asked his partner if I could use the restroom. He told me to go and tell him in the gas station. And as I was walking towards the gas station, she was walking in front of me going into the gas station.
Okay. So about how far in front of you was she?
I would say maybe where the gentleman in the gray blazer is behind you. Maybe a little bit farther, I'm not really sure about that distance.
From where you are to him?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, boy, I'm really bad at estimates.
20, 25 feet.
Yeah, I would agree with about 20, 25 feet. And you said you never got a chance to see this little girl's face.
No.
Was there anything else about her that you can remember?
I just remember her being kind of small, like outside of just seeing her get in and out of the car. When I was walking towards her, I was like, she's tiny, and I just remembered the coat.
Okay. Tiny, like in what way? Like tiny, skinny, short?
Kind of skinny and short.
And did you ever ask Jarvis who the little girl was?
Yes.
And what did he tell you?
He told me, and I can't remember if it was this exact word, or he said it's my partner's niece, or he said it was King's niece.
Okay, but
But
you knew who he was referring to?
yes,
Okay. Did you think anything of it at the time?
no,
Okay. And what is it that made you think something? Was there a time where you thought something different?
yes.
Okay. And what is it that made you think something different?
I received phone call, well, a video call from one of his kids' mom, and she told me about some things that happened on Valentine's Day, and then she sent me a video of a podcast about my brother.
Okay. And what did you do as a result of receiving those things?
I called Shannon and I asked her for Sergeant Jones' phone number.
Okay. And who's the Shannon that you called?
His kid's mom.
Shannon Harris?
Yes.
Okay. Do you do anything before you go and talk to Sergeant Jones?
Yes.
Okay. What is it that you do?
Okay, so after having a conversation with Shannon Harris and his other kid's mom, I was informed that his partner King, I guess something happened where
Objection, this is hearsay.
There's not a statement yet, Judge.
Being informed.
I'm not sure what she's even about to say.
Okay, just to the extent that it's informed of someone else's statement.
You might have to object in a couple moments.
You need to speak up,
If you could stand up
please.
and make your objection.
Yes, just objecting to the fact that she was informed of something. It appears this might be hearsay, but we'll see. Yeah.
Could you finish what you were saying? I don't know where you're going with this.
I'm trying to remember where I left. Okay, so after talking to Shannon Harris and his other kid's mom, I was informed of some things that had taken place, I think Valentine's Day. So they told me that his
So
partner
objection.
King,
Okay, cool.
Okay, so
That
at this point, this is hearsay. They told me, and the lack of personal knowledge of the things that she was informed of.
can I finish?
1 second.
One.
What is an objection?
I'm sorry.
The witness
Sorry.
has to stop talking.
So based on those, do you go and talk to someone else?
Yes,
Okay. Who do you go and talk to?
his partner King
Okay. And where is it that you go and talk to King
at the shop on Harbor Encounters.
at? Okay. And without telling me what King said, kind of describe what was your conversation about?
Well, I went to see what happened and what was going on. During that time, I told him that I had never seen any little girl at my brother's shop, besides my nieces, outside of the little girl that I saw getting out of his truck that day.
Okay.
And you told this to who?
King,
Who is King again?
his business partner.
Okay, and do you know his government name?
I believe it's Cordero or something like that. I just always call him King.
So you went and told him that you hadn't seen anyone out at the shop besides your nieces and then the one little girl you saw that one day.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ask him about that little girl?
Well, I didn't ask him about it. After I said that to him, he told me.
Objection, Your Honor, this is gonna be hearsay again.
Judge, it's going to go to the effect on the listening.
There could be an exception. I don't know what she's saying. So you might as well just stay standing up. Go ahead, say what you're gonna say.
After I mentioned to him that I had only saw my nieces and one particular little girl, he then told me that that was Naziah that I saw that day and I was there.
So I would object then, given now that she has testified to that it is hearsay and that it is being introduced for the truth.
Judge, I would say that it's actually a statement of identification.
So this is not an identification that she personally made, she's just being told.
When she saw Naziah that day, so it's.
She didn't know who it was. I mean, she had no idea who this was. That's
She
not
didn't know
her
who she was.
identification.
So it is hearsay.
Okay, so without saying what King said, were you informed of anything about a little girl that you saw on January 9th, 2024?
Yes.
Okay, and to your knowledge, Jarvis had told you that that was King's niece.
Yes.
Okay, and when you talked to King, did you have reason to not believe what Jarvis told you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know your nieces from Jarvis? Sorry. That is a poorly worded question. I am sorry. If that was your niece, would you have recognized her that day?
Yes.
Okay. And you did not recognize this little girl as your niece, did you?
No.
Okay. What is it that you did after speaking with King that day?
I called Shannon Harris and I asked her for Sergeant Jones' phone number.
Okay. And did you eventually talk to Sergeant Jones?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. What day was it that you went to the shop and saw the little girl?
Can I ask you a question? I didn't remember the exact day at that time.
Okay. What is it that makes you believe that it was Naziah Harris that you saw on that day?
I'm not quite sure how to answer what you're asking me. Like,
That may be a poorly worded question. I'm sorry. Can I just have 1 second, George?
Yes.
Ms. Butts, did you come to learn of the day that you had gone to Jarvis's shop by going through the locations on your phone?
Yes,
And that's the day that you don't remember off the top of your head right now, but it is revealed in your phone locations?
yes.
Let's see here. One second, let me get her finder. When is it that you went through your phone locations to determine the date? I'm sorry, do you need a moment?
I believe it's February, I think like 24th or the 26th. I can't remember the exact date.
Okay, that's when you would have went through your phone to find those?
Yes,
Okay, and did you also go through that in your interview with Sergeant Jones?
yes,
Okay. And did you give Sergeant Jones permission to look at your location data?
yes,
Okay. And your phone kind of extraction in general? Like to go through your phone for the data?
yes.
Okay. Nothing else, Judge.
Good afternoon.
Uh,
So you go to the shop where your brother works periodically, right?
From time to time, yes,
You've been there prior to the day we've been talking about today,
yes,
a couple times at least,
yes,
and you'd been back there after.
yes.
But the day we've been talking about, that's the only time you ever saw a child there.
That was the only time I saw a child I didn't recognize.
Okay, so you had seen other children there before?
Yes,
Okay, when you say that you recognize, these are who exactly?
my
usually?
nieces.
And when you first arrived at the shop that day, Jarvis told you that he wasn't going to be able to work on your car?
No,
No? Did you ask him if he'd be able to?
Judge, I think this calls for hearsay. They can't admit statements of the defendant.
I'm looking more so for her own statement, actually.
For her
We'll
what?
start with her own statement.
Okay.
Did you ask him right away if he would be able to work on your car
I talked to him prior to coming to the shop.
before you arrived? You asked if he could work on your car that day?
I asked him to look at my car that day.
Okay. Did you arrive at the shop with the understanding that he would or would not be able to?
I arrived at the shop knowing that he was going to look at my car.
One moment. And was that via text or call or some other way?
Probably video call.
Okay, so a video call a little bit before you headed over.
Earlier in the day, maybe.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what time.
Okay, so that's how you decided that you'd go over later.
He told me I could come.
This is kind of all calling for hearsay in a backdoor way.
The response is hearsay. Not
Yeah.
that you necessarily asked for it, but it's hearsay.
Sure, we can
Can be
keep it just her own. So to be clear, we don't need to talk about what he said to you, but you did a video call to him. And in that call, you asked if he could work on your car.
You
Right.
keep saying work on my car. I said look at my car.
Okay, look at your car, but you asked him personally in a video call.
Yes.
And that was maybe that morning.
I don't remember what time of day it was, but it was before I went to him.
Thank you. Okay. And as you were saying, this day, I think you said you saw some other children there at other times, but this particular child, you only ever saw this child on this particular day.
Yes.
And the whole time you were there, from your testimony and from that police interview, you said that you never saw her face.
Yes.
And then you did also see some news stories about this case.
Yes.
Yeah, in the podcast that you talked about. Right, there were some podcasts.
I had already saw her on the news, but I did not know who she was.
Sure, but that was by seeing those stories, that's how you started to think.
Well, I was sent the podcast after some other things that was told to me. That's when I received the podcast.
So initially, between the day you were at the shop, right, and then until you started to see that news, at first you didn't make this connection that maybe she was anyone in particular.
Not at all.
And then through seeing that news, those podcasts, that's when you started to think she
No.
was.
That's not the reason why I thought that.
No, but that's the timing, or it's not?
I guess you could say that.
That's when you started to, at least when you saw those things, that's when you started to wonder.
I was wondering before I saw the podcast.
Okay, in your police interview that you did,
Mhm.
did you tell them that at first when you saw the news, you didn't really make a connection because of not having seen her face?
Yes.
So that interview was on February 26th, 2024, right?
Yes.
And you were having some trouble remembering some of the specific details from January 9th at that point?
Not so much as remembering maybe the order I remembered it in.
Okay, were there some times at least though when you were asked some questions and some details that you had to say, I can't remember some things?
I can't remember.
Okay. And would you agree that at least
Like,
when it,
it's been that.
okay, I was just saying,
probably did. I guess it would be safe to say because I didn't know.
okay, so you think it's safe to say that at that point in time, there are at least some details you were having a hard time, some questions you couldn't answer.
I can't disagree.
And it was pretty close in time, shortly before that police interview, that was when you first started to think that maybe this girl you'd seen at the shop had been Messiah Harris.
Can you repeat that?
So the first time you started to think that maybe that child, the one you saw, maybe that was Messiah Harris, that was pretty close in time to the police interview.
Maybe about a week or so before.
Okay, I believe, does it sound right to you that I think you told the police that it was on the Thursday prior to the interview?
Whatever the Thursday was after Valentine's Day.
Okay, so probably February 22nd. That was the Thursday prior to your interview.
Okay.
And then when you were at the shop, you primarily saw this child while she was inside a truck, right?
I didn't know it was a child in the truck until she kept getting out.
Okay, but when you saw her, she was in a truck?
I saw her getting out the truck, yes.
And were you inside your vehicle?
Yes.
You arrived in the daylight, right?
Yes.
And that's, I think, what you're referring to, right? Initially, that's when you didn't yet know somebody was in the truck.
Can you say that again?
So at the beginning, when you first got there, right, you didn't know right away that somebody was in the truck.
No, I didn't.
I think you had said before, because it was so light outside, it was a bit difficult to see into the truck.
I wasn't really paying attention to his truck. He was outside of it.
Sure. And then in your police interview, you referred to then seeing a light in the truck, and that's when you started to see somebody?
Yeah, that's when the door opened.
Okay, so there's a light turned on, and at the same time, a door opened?
That's the reason the light was on.
Okay, because the truck door was open. Yes?
Sure.
And you said that you saw a couple different times her go back and forth to the gas station,
Yes.
and only one of those different times you were on your way to the gas station as well.
Yes.
But for that whole time, she remained in front of you?
When I was going into the gas station, she was in front of me. When I walked into the gas station, she went to the left, I went straight, and over to the right.
For that walk over to the gas station, was it getting dark at that point?
It was already dark.
Okay. And while she was in the truck, you were not sure exactly which part of the truck this was?
I can't remember, no.
Okay. So you understood initially that when you arrived, you'd probably have to wait at the shop sometime?
Yes.
I think you referred to just one other car he worked on first. Is that all there was before you?
It was actually another vehicle out there, but I don't pay my brother to work on my car, so I had to wait until he was done making his money. So I waited.
Sure. So do you know how many cars he worked on before he got to you?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you know if there were any other customers present in person?
I did see someone, I can't remember what kind of car it was in, but it was, I believe, a gentleman that needed to pull into the garage because Jarvis asked me to move my car out the way because I was blocking the garage. So, yes.
Was this someone you recognized at all?
No.
So in total, other than Jarvis, or who you referred to as King, was there anyone present that you recognized that day?
No. Just King and my brother.
So as you said, the sun set while you were there. Do you know about how long it was light out before it got dark?
Well, I got there about 4 o'clock. It didn't take long for it to get dark. I don't remember the exact time, but it got dark pretty fast.
Okay, and then other than when you went to the gas station, were you always at the shop?
What do you mean?
So did you go anywhere else?
No, I never left. All I did was move my car when he asked me to move my car. And once the driveway was clear, I back where I was. I didn't go anywhere else.
Okay. And when you were present, not going to the gas station, were you always inside your vehicle?
Yes,
Were your doors open or closed?
closed.
Okay, and were your windows up or down?
They were up unless I asked him something.
Okay, so sometimes if you needed to communicate, you just open the window.
Or I would call him, yeah. Yes.
And you were saying today that at one point you did speak to Jarvis about who this girl was.
Yes.
And when you were talking to the police about this, you had said that you weren't sure exactly what his response was.
What I said was I wasn't sure of the wording.
Sure, that's what I mean. That
Okay.
You told the police, right, that it might have been King's niece, or maybe he said it's my homeboy's niece.
He said it was his partner or King's niece, but he definitely said it was someone else's niece.
Okay. Does it sound right to you that you used the term homeboy's niece with the police?
I probably did.
Okay.
That's all the same to me.
And then that's what you continue to think at first, right? At first, you just believed that it was someone else's niece.
Yeah,
Specifically, you thought it was probably King's niece,
that's what I was told.
which I think as we established, right, King is the same person as Cordell, right?
Yes.
And then after that, you would listen to some of these podcasts and to the news.
I listened to his kid's mother, and then I watched the podcast.
Okay, so those are some things that happened. Both.
Yes.
And then once you started to have this different information you were gathering, then you kind of started to look into it for yourself,
Yes.
do some of your own investigation.
Yes.
And then at one point following that, that's when you decided to go back to the shop
Yes.
to speak to Cordell
Yes.
and to discuss some of these things you've been learning with him.
Yes.
You and Jarvis are not particularly close.
I wouldn't say that we're really distant. I don't see him every day. I don't talk to him every day, but he's my brother.
He's your brother, but you don't have a very close relationship, or?
He's my brother.
What about with his children? Are you close with his children?
Some of the ones that I know,
So he has 13 kids, right?
I have no idea.
Do you have an idea of around how many kids he has?
A lot.
Okay. Do some of them live with different mothers?
Yes.
And you don't spend time with all of them?
No.
So which ones do you know?
I don't want to say their names. They're minors.
Okay.
And I don't want to disclose their identity.
Could you just give like a number instead? How many do you know?
I'm counting. About 8.
So when you say 8 that you know, does that mean 8 that you have like personal contact with?
I have.
When is the last time that you've seen any of them?
About 2 months ago.
Were you and Jarvis raised by your grandmother?
For the most part.
And were there some events surrounding her death that related to your relationship with Jarvis that impacted some things?
No.
Oh, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any redirect?
Yes, Judge. Ms. Butts, you said that there was another reason, there was a different reason that you thought that it was Ms. I that you had saw that day. When you were starting to compile, or when you talked to Shannon Harris, and then you got the podcast. Before that, you said there was other reasons why you had thought that was Messiah.
So, am I?
Yes.
can I
What
speak for-
what is
okay,
that? Yes.
So, at the time, I didn't know. Once I realized that it was a possibility that I saw her, there were several reasons that led me to believe that it was a possibility I was there. And I didn't want to get into detail as far as what I knew before the podcast. But if you would like, I would explain to you why I thought these things.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Can we approach? Yes. We'll be right back. Go in the hallway.
You need some water or something? Can you get some water from there? Can you give her some water? Oh, yeah. Please. Calm down. It's gonna be all right. Huh? Take a deep breath. It's gonna be okay. Thank you. That was so much.
So long story short, that's the gentleman right there that did the nefarious act. That is Mr. Jarvis Butts. And I believe I don't know. It's just a lot going on. Even with his sister, she says that she was up there at the business, right? And she had questions about it. It's not really settling. It's really not setting in with me that she didn't know anything, right? It was something going on. Something looked strange. She's saying that her brother said that it was his business partner's um, niece or whatever. But it does not stop here. Everybody's back in
Can you
now.
do some more?
No, just it.
Okay.
I got like 2 more items.
And it didn't jam anything. It didn't jam either. Okay, we are back on the record. Ms. Butts, you are still under oath. Ms. Ripley, go right ahead.
Thank you. So, Ms. Books, what's the sources of these reasons that you have? Are these things that you know from your personal knowledge? Are these things that you observe yourself?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Repeat that.
So these reasons that you were thinking of, what are the sources of them? Is it somebody told you something? Is it something that you saw yourself, you observed, or a coupling of that?
I would say a bit of both. Things that I was told and things that I heard.
Okay. Were there heard from Jarvis?
No.
Okay. were these things that you had already known prior
Prior to,
to thinking that that was Messiah that you saw?
I'm sorry, I'm confused on the question.
So are these things the sources that you have for these reasons? Are they like things that you have personal knowledge of, or are they things that somebody told you about?
These were things that I was told. I'm trying to understand the question that you're asking me.
Ms. Ripley, you're referring to the question before we went into sidebar about her leading up to believing that it was possibly Naziah Harris at the shop, correct?
Yes.
Does that help clarify
Okay,
the line of questioning?
yes.
Okay. So those reasons, those things, are those things that you had known before? Are they based on your observations, or?
Well, these were things that I was told. And after asking the questions that I needed to ask, I came up with the conclusion that it was a possibility that Naziah was the little girl that I saw that day.
Thank you. You said that when you were parked at Jarvis's shop, that it was getting dark out.
Yes.
Okay. That darkness, is that maybe the reason why the color on the jacket stood out?
Well, the jacket didn't stand out until I was walking into the gas station behind her because I wasn't really like paying attention to what she had on. I just kept seeing her get in and out of the truck, going in the gas station and coming back to the truck. And that's what caught my attention.
Okay, so the movement is what attracted you to it at first.
Yes.
Okay. Nothing for the judge. Nothing for the
Okay, Ms. Butts, you were done.
Okay, so that was pretty much her testimony. So that was the brother sister. Now, what I felt like what the attorneys were trying to figure out was establish the relationship between the brother and the sister, because this was looking like the sister just wanted to protect the brother, right? So I think that's why they were chastising her and really like trying to get down to the nitty gritty. Like, was this something that your brother told you? Is this, I mean, who's telling you this information? And then she went on a podcast. Then she withheld information. Then when it was time for her to talk to the officers, she was having bad memories. She couldn't remember this. She couldn't remember that. So I think that they were really trying to catch her up in her words. Now, her conclusion was that that was Naziah. I just think that it's a bit strange that she didn't ask her brother like more probing questions, kind of about what went on. Um, she just kept saying, oh, it was just her in and out of the car, in and out of the car. She was going over back and forth into the gas station. Well, what was she going into the gas station for? You know? And then y'all both got out. She went in, but I mean, did you go to the restroom? Where did she go into the store? That would have been my next question. Let's get into this. Now, there was the grandmother that had custody over Naziah. And I really wanted to get into this. Let me see. Okay, so that's not it. Give me 1 second. So that was the sister. Where is the mom? Okay, now this is, I don't know who this young lady is, but give me 1 second. I know that they had her on the stand as well. Y'all give me a second. Just bear with me.
You swear to tell the truth, no truth, and nothing but the truth. Yes. Not yourself.
So this was another interview. Let's get into it.
Whenever
Thank
you're ready.
you. Could you say your name for the record?
Talasha Moore.
And, excuse me, Ms. Moore, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. But first, I want to ask you, do you know someone by the name of Cordell Wright?
I do.
And how do you know Mr. Wright?
He is the father of my nephew, my 17-year-old nephew.
So, your sister's son.
Yes.
Gotcha. And is that how you met Mr. Wright?
Yeah.
Or your sister?
Yes.
Okay. And in what context is your relationship with Mr. Wright? How did you know him? Did he ever do anything for you? Things like that.
He fixed my mother's car. He worked on her car.
Okay. And what kind of car does your mother drive?
A red Jaguar.
And what's your mom's name?
Jacqueline Campbell.
And going back to January of 2024, where were you living at the time? Not your specific address, just the city.
Ypsilanti.
And who else lived with you in Ypsilanti?
My mom and my son.
And would Mr. Wright ever come out to Ypsilanti to fix your mom's car, her Jaguar?
Yes.
How often did he do that?
Like a couple times, at least 2 times.
And was that around January of 2024?
That was the last time.
In January was the
Yes.
last time? And when he would go out there, would he bring anyone with him?
This last time he did.
What about
For
prior?
the last 2 times. So before January 9th, him and someone else came, and then on January 9th, they both came.
Okay. And the person that he brought with him, do you see that person in the courtroom today?
Yes.
And could you point to him and identify a piece of clothing he's wearing?
Well, I can only see the top of his head right now.
Are you 100% sure that it's that person? Could we have everyone remove their masks, Judge, just for a brief moment?
If everyone in the courtroom could remove their mask if they have one on, please.
Ms. Moore, do you see the person that Mr. Wright brought with him?
I do.
And could you point to him and identify a piece of clothing he's wearing?
A green one-piece thing.
For the record, the witness has identified Jarvis Butts, the defendant in this matter.
So reflected.
Thank you. And you said Mr. Butts came out how many times with Cordell?
At least 2. So this last time in January and the time before that.
Okay, and the time before that, who was anyone else with the two of them?
No.
And what were they doing the time before January 9th?
Working on the car. I can't remember. It was a couple of things they had to fix on it. And they came out and did it in the driveway. And
Sorry.
no. I was just gonna say the last time when we got the car towed to the shop and they drove it back up.
Okay. And so in between the most recent time before January 9th, the Jaguar, correct me if I'm wrong, was towed to Detroit?
Correct.
Okay. And then on January 9th, did you see that red Jaguar again?
Yeah.
Okay. Who brought that Jaguar out to Ypsilanti?
Cordell and Jarvis.
Okay. And was anyone else with Cordell and Jarvis?
Yes.
Who is that person?
Naziah.
And I want to clarify, at the time on the 9th, when Cordell, Jarvis, and Naziah came, did you know that that was Naziah Harris?
No,
Do you know that now?
I do know now.
Okay. And is that based on information you learned or seen in the news and things like that?
Well, it was based on when the detectives came to the house to question us. That's when I found out who she was.
But at the time on the 9th, you didn't know?
Mm-mm.
Is that a no?
No, yes or no, I did not know.
Now, let's talk about when they came out on the 9th, January 2024. What was that interaction? How long did it last? Can you kind of take me through start to finish that their visit and delivering the car?
So they came, they delivered the car. They were talking to my mom about what was wrong, gave her the invoice. It was just like a regular day when they came in, they sat on the couch for a few minutes. Naziah was sitting in the chair by the TV. We spoke, very brief. Asked her if she wanted something to drink. She didn't. My 6-year-old son ran up to her, the dog. It was just very mellow. They sat there, we talked about the car and stuff. We talked about my nephew. Cordell was trying to wait till my nephew got out of school, but because he was on tether, they had to leave, so they didn't get to stay long enough for my nephew to come.
And your nephew would be Cordell's son?
Cordell's son, yeah, correct.
Did you talk to Mr. Butts about Naziah? Did he introduce her or anything like that?
We just asked, hey, everybody spoke. He said this is his niece, and that was pretty much the basis of it. I cannot remember if he said her name or not, but he did introduce her as his niece.
And so, just to be clear, not sure about the name, but he said this is his niece about Naziah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
That's a yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. And then after that conversation, let me ask you, during that time when they were there, did you notice anything that was unsettling or concerning about this?
Okay, so I want y'all to really get up into this. So, do y'all think that Cordell is innocent? Cordell is Jarvis's business partner. But as you heard this lady say, Cordell and Jarvis brought her mom's car home. They were there, they were chatting, they end up coming in the house. They had Naziah with them. Jarvis passed Naziah off as his niece. Do you think that Cordell knew anything about it? Or was he an innocent bystander and he thought that, oh, yeah, this is just his niece? And my thing is, with Cordell, has he seen any other young ladies up there with Jarvis while he was on the job working? Let's get back into it.
Naziah?
No.
It was just a normal interaction.
Yes.
After that interaction was over, did the three of them, Cordell, Jarvis, and Naziah, leave your house?
Yes.
Okay. And as far as you know, they were headed back to Detroit, correct?
Correct.
When they left, whose car were they leaving in?
Cordell's truck.
And all three of them were in the same car?
Yes.
And you said that they were delivering the Jaguar to your mom or to your house, correct?
Yes.
Did you see them pull up? Do you know what the driving and seating arrangements was?
I do not.
I have nothing further to say.
Okay, Ross.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So you're technically not related to Cordell, right?
Correct.
That's just the uncle. I'm sorry, he is the
The
father
father.
of your nephew. Okay. How would you?
Okay, so this lady right here, so Miss Moore, her sister has a child or children with Cordell. So, wow, you talk about taking down a family's business. Taking down a legacy over the most salacious, egregious. I can't even wrap my mind around it, y'all. All right, let's continue to keep getting into it. Okay, you all. So she is done testifying. Were you all able to hear that? Were y'all all able to hear her testimony? Oh my goodness. Hopefully y'all were. All right, let's go ahead and let's drop that down right quick and then let's take that off. Um, all right, so that was Cordell, which is Jarvis' business partner. So that was a business partner. That was his child's mother's sister. Now, which one was it? All right, so this one right here, this video right here that I'm about to pull up, this is going to be no, we've already done that one. 1 second. Give me 1 second. Oh my God. Okay, give me 1 second, you all. Okay, so no, this makes sense too. We'll actually go ahead and play this one. Um, let's go ahead and drop her down, and then I'm gonna bring this one up because this one is more. This has something. Okay, so this is gonna be the preliminary hearing exam. Let's get into it. Okay, let's take a listen in right quick.
Testified back in November that they didn't move from that shop, which was at East Warren and Neff in the city of Detroit, until May or June, based on Nazia's birthday, which is in her medical records. At that time, she would have been 12 years old, and the minor witness testified clearly describing an act of penetration, specifically penis to anal opening. With respect to the criminal sexual, child sexually abusive activity, that would be based on the text messages as well as the minor's testimony as well. Combining those two things satisfies the elements of those charges. However, going to count one in murder in the first degree premeditated, I would like to go through and put some of the pieces together. And we are sitting here today, or standing here today in court on January 9th, 2025, which is 1 year, almost to the minute, the last time Naziah was seen on a camera in the city of Detroit, which is on the screen now. The last time that she was seen was on January 9th, 2024 at 2:56, getting off of the bus at 3 Mile Drive in Cornwall and walking down to Bedford. She was walking towards what she didn't know at the time would be Jarvis Butts and her ultimate murder by him. We take that moment in time and then go to Cordell Wright's testimony where he testified that they picked Naziah up on their way back to their shop at 9000 Connor, and they proceeded with her to that location. We have Jarvis Butts' sister's testimony, Tijuana Butts, who did say that she saw a young girl with a very descriptive and distinct jacket getting in and out of that car, the white Cadillac Escalade. That would have been before Jarvis, Cordell, and Naziah departed for Ypsilanti. We have Sergeant O'Rourke's testimony as to his cell phone locations based on cell tower information and the historical call detail records, which placed them consistent going out to Ypsilanti. And then we have Cordell's testimony getting them back to the shop. Talaisha Moore also testified to seeing Naziah in Ypsilanti with Cordell and Jarvis. Cordell, as we know, testified that he had to get back to his house based on his tether hours by 9 p.m. And that is the last time that anyone who is not Jarvis Butts would see Naziah Harris alive. From the shop We proceed out to the Park Crest Inn, where Jarvis Butts checked into a hotel at 9:30 p.m. and Sergeant O'Rourke's testimony corroborates this, placing his phone in the area of that 20,000 Harper address at around midnight till early in the next morning on the 10th, using the data that you see on the screen in those times. Recapping January 9th, this is the last time that we have any sort of communication from Neziah. There was, if you look at those messages that Sergeant Jones went through and read, just between Neziah and Jarvis, there was consistent and constant communication up until January 9th. There's also no messages from Jarvis after Neziah goes missing on the 9th, looking for her, seeing where she is, trying to find her, trying to help, as anyone should do at that time, her family locate her. There's no messages to her phone, to that Text Now account from Jarvis Butts' phone. Her legal guardian and grandmother, Annette Harris, has not seen any social media posts. The OIC of the case, Sergeant Jones, has not seen anything for a total of 1 year now. The Lieutenant George Harris, who was involved in the investigation in the first month, didn't see anything that he saw from social media or Text Now after the 9th. Jarvis Butts on the 9th, we know, borrowed Latricia Johnson's car overnight, which was unusual. He borrowed that and then again borrowed it on the 10th or 11th. We know that Neziah's glasses were found in that car sometime after the 10th or 11th when Latricia Johnson was at that shop, and Jarvis Butts snatches them out of her hand. From the Park Crest Inn and from January 9th, we go out to 7 Mile and Burke. This is by far the most important location in this case because we know that the defendant spent from 11:40 p.m. on the 10th to 1:34 a.m., nearly 2 hours in that area, in that wooded area where the Rouge River runs through. And this is from the slideshow of the scene photos that were taken at 7 Mile and Burke. This is the area where it's the people's theory, Jarvis Butts did at least one of two things. Either killed Neziah at 7 Mile and Burke, but at the very least dumped her body in this location. We know this because of the evidence that was found there, specifically the black hoodie, which you see in this photo here, as well as the pink bodysuit and the shoes that we confirmed or that are hers based on the picture that the OIC received from her brother. And those items were collected. The black hoodie and pink jumpsuit were tested. And importantly, Rion Green testified as to which swabs were which. This analysis here and hypothesis and results pertains to the right shoulder swab on Neziah Harris's black hoodie that she took that picture in when she was in school on January 9th. The one, importantly, that Annette Harris testified was in good condition when Neziah left. We will get to pictures of that, but this shows that Neziah Harris's DNA is there as well as Jarvis. And importantly, this is one of the stain swabs that was positive, not just for blood, but human blood based on the hemotrace results. In the next one, this pertains to not the stain swabs, but the regular swab that Rion Green testified was a wearer ID swab. Importantly here, Jarvis Butts' DNA from that swab that would have been taken around the neck of that sweater or the end of the arms of that sweater is there with very strong support. And of course, Neziah's DNA is there as well. And when we look at that sweater, specifically through the PowerPoint photos that Rion Green took and put together, we can see that there is a lot of markings on this. If the court looks closely on this, and I did, there are 15 phenol-positive stain markings on this sweater. This is just the front of that sweater. And of course, the court paid attention and saw the markings or the damage to the hood that it is the people's theory would have been stab wounds or something to that effect that happened when Jarvis Butts murdered Neziah Harris. We also have to look, and it goes to the premeditation element as well as everything he did before at Jarvis Butts' actions, specifically what he did to attempt to conceal or cover up his role in the murder of Neziah Harris. First, we have the glasses that he made sure he grabbed directly from Latricia Johnson's hands when shown, that are consistent with the glasses she had in the photo from the night when she was in school. We have the jail call to Cordell Wright to get that phone of his out of Miss Davis's car and into someone else's possession, which he testified he tried to do, but was ultimately unsuccessful. And then Sergeant Jones testified that they ultimately did recover that phone from Miss Davis's car. There is the phone call to Latricia Johnson, which was played when she was testifying, saying to get anything he touched clean, to clean anything he touched, to get anything, don't drive her car, drive his mom's car, which is important because when you combine her testimony of when Jarvis Butts took her car, those 2 times on the 9th and 10th, and then even the next day or that same day, it's important because that car is the car that he transported Neziah Harris out to 7 Mile and Bird to either dump her body or to murder and then dump her body there. And we can go through all of the lies that Jarvis Butts told any detective or any officer that he testified to, but in highlighting those, he denies to Detective Mays that he was with Neziah at all or had talked to Neziah at all on the 9th, denies ever picking her up, denies to, even when confronted with the January 9th messages, he said that it wasn't him initially. Obviously, we heard in the subsequent interviews, specifically on June 1st with the OIC, he came off of that. He told Shannon Harris that Neziah texted him on the 9th. She says that he never did that. And we have some of their messages in the record as well. He denies going to a hotel and denies going to a hotel with Neziah Harris and denies having any sort of sexual relationship with Neziah, even though the text now messages completely prove that that is an absolute lie. We also have his motive. We know from Sergeant Jones that he was going to be going into custody supposedly on January 9th for until roughly December, I believe, is what Sergeant Jones testified to. We know that that date was adjourned because he said in his interview that he had a legal issue. He said it was out in Clinton Township, but I submit to this court that that's not the legal issue he was talking about. He was talking about the legal issue he would have had if Neziah had been left alive. He had to make sure that when he was in custody, that she was not going to give birth to any child of his. That's his motive in this case. That's why that's January 9th. Sentencing date was adjourned to February 7th so he could take care of that potential legal issue. He was being told consistently by Neziah throughout the months that she might be pregnant, and then on 11/27, she says to him that it's hard to do this gym shit with this baby. Less than a week or 2 weeks later, he's searching on Google how to abort a baby, how to not just abort a baby or get an abortion, but how to do it at home, how to get rid of that without any medical professional or any responsible mandated reporter knowing about it. We clearly have that motive. And obviously, Judge, one of the big issues in this case is proving that Neziah Harris is dead without having a body. On January 9th, she vanished off the face of the earth. There is absolutely no evidence after the 9th that she was alive, that she was sending messages to anyone. Her, again, legal guardian had not seen her since the 9th. No one else, officers, friends, family have seen her since the 9th. There's no social media post reviewed by any officer to this day that would indicate she was alive. There's no messages, no further messages on text now after the 9th. There's a full and complete stop of any activity that would indicate she was alive. And Judge, I submit to this court that if that were the evidence that we had at this point, that would be enough at this point for a probable cause determination to show that she is in fact deceased today. However, there is more than that. Her hoodie found at 7 Mile and Bird, which we just saw a photo of, has Jarvis Butts' DNA on it and Neziah Harris' DNA on it, and it is covered in blood, indicating that something traumatic happened to her. And all the other evidence shows that something traumatic happened to her at the hands of Jarvis Butts. And then we go back to his motive. told by Desire that she was pregnant, searched all of the home abortion procedures, and was going to go into the Wayne County Jail until December, which we just passed, of 2024. Judge, I submit to this court that the evidence that you have heard over the last 4 days proves not only that Neziah Harris is currently deceased, but also that she was murdered by the defendant, who had plenty of motive to do so, had plenty of opportunity to do so, and he did that. And I will note that the defendant in this case, Jarvis Butts, does not get a break because he successfully hid her body. The evidence to a probable cause determination, which the question is she probably dead, and did the defendant probably do that? Both questions are answered with a yes, based on all of the evidence that you have seen. I would reserve any further argument for rebuttal. Thank you.
Attorney Quick?
Thank you, Judge. I know how well aware the court is that we have a very serious task here. We've been here for 4 days, and at this point, we have to look critically at what we've heard and what we've seen over the last 4 days and determine if there's enough evidence by a probable cause standard that Mr. Butts committed premeditated first-degree murder. And if you look critically at what the evidence is and the lack of connection between these pieces of alleged evidence, there is not even by a probable cause standard. To bind over on premeditated first-degree murder, there has to be sufficient facts or evidence to show by a probable cause standard that each of the elements of premeditated murder in the first degree were committed. First, there's got to be a death. There has to be evidence that the defendant caused the death of the deceased, that some action that he made or did caused that person's death, that there was an intent to kill, that the intent to kill was premeditated, and that it was deliberate. And here there is not enough evidence, even by a probable cause standard, that Jarvis Butts caused the death of Neziah Harris. There's been no testimony of any eyewitness stating that they saw Jarvis Butts doing any act that could have caused Neziah Harris's death. There's been no testimony of any eyewitness that they saw Jarvis Butts doing anything in preparation of doing something that could have caused her death. And there's been no admission of Mr. Butts to support that element. There's not probable cause to believe that Mr. Butts had an intent to kill Neziah Harris, nor that he premeditated her death. There's no evidence of any threats made by Mr. Butts to Neziah. There's no evidence of any threats made to a third party that he was going to do something or that he had a problem that he had to take care of. The issue or the statement was he had a legal matter. And Ms. Davis testified that she was aware of an issue that he had in Clinton Township and that she was the one that was driving him around to court. There's no testimony that he took any specific action in a deliberation to kill her or that in killing her. There's Google searches about legal ways to abort a child, not how to kill somebody or dispose of a body. There's no evidence that he did anything related to the Google searches. There's no receipts of purchases or anything like that. And these text messages were 2 weeks after they were, I believe, December 9th and 10th, which was, I believe, 2 weeks or 13 days from 11/27/23, which is the text message about gym class. And then there's this kind of cryptic text message in between that says it healed. We don't know what that means, but we don't know what Mr. Butts took that to mean. It doesn't necessarily mean that he believed she was pregnant. There's no evidence of a pregnancy. We have medical records until, I believe it's October of 2023, that don't indicate a pregnancy, that she had been to the doctor in September when she originally texts or messages Mr. Butts and says she thinks that she's pregnant. There's no evidence of a pregnancy. She went to the doctor. We heard from both her guardian, her grandmother, and her aunt, Shannon Harris, who lived with her. No testimony from either of them that they suspected that she was pregnant, that there was any medical issues that they had to take care of because that would have caused them to think that she was pregnant. there was an insinuation, well, was she wearing baggy clothing? Was she wearing bigger clothing? There was no testimony that they had to go out and buy new clothes for her because her clothes didn't fit, or that she started wearing baggy clothing. She was wearing denim pants on the day that she disappeared, and there was no testimony that those were not pants that she had recently bought because she didn't fit into the clothing that she previously had. There's no evidence of any kind of plan. There's no messaging between Mr. Butts and Ms. Harris that indicates an escalation of animosity between the two of them. In fact, he essentially kind of starts to disengage. And so there's no written evidence that he had any kind of plan or any animosity toward her at that point. Our submission would be that he understood at that point that she wasn't pregnant and was disengaging. Let's talk about what we did see. So we know that Messiah got on her school bus around 2:45 on the 9th. She got off the bus a few minutes later, and then she was seen walking up Bedford. She was wearing at that point light colored blue jeans, a black hoodie, and then a colorful coat with fur around the hood. There's some insinuation that somehow there was a plan that she would meet up with Mr. Butts, but the testimony of Mr. Wright was that they were driving around that afternoon back and forth to various auto parts stores, and I believe that they in fact had to go back to one kind of unplanned because they either missed something or there was an issue. And so to say that somehow Mr. Butts would have known that she would have been on that street at that specific time and that they would have been there at that specific time is quite a leap, considering they didn't know where they were going to be when, because they were doing all this driving around back and forth to various stores. Witnesses put Messiah at Mr. Butts' auto shop later that afternoon, and then in Ypsilanti with Mr. Butts and Cordell Wright, and Mr. Wright puts her back at the shop later that evening. But then we hear from Sergeant O'Rourke, who did all the cell phone mapping, that at 9 p.m., Mr. Butts was actually at 13662 Wilshire, which is his home, where Angel Leonard lives and where they have kids. So did Messiah go back with him to that house? And then at 9:30 is when he checks into the Park Crest Motel. Now, we don't know who was with him there, but there is no evidence that Messiah was ever there. They searched it, they took DNA, they took clippings of various things, they swabbed a shower drain, and there's no evidence that she was ever in that room. We did hear testimony that the Park Crest is a known place where Mr. Butts frequents and takes various lady friends for a rendezvous. It's much more possible and plausible that he took one of his lady friends there, than somebody who he was going to kill, right? He's going to a place where they know him. He's a frequent flyer there. And is he going to take somebody there where he would later, before he was going to kill them? That makes no sense. That is not logical. We heard then that after Mr. Butts left Park Crest Motel, he went to 4 Alexandrine, which is Midtown, so kind of across town. And that's where his other girlfriend, Najeen Rushing, lives. So did he take Naziah with him there to see Miss Rushing? And he stays there for a while, I think, according to Sergeant O'Rourke's mapping. And then we hear that he is at 7 Mile and Berg on January the 10th at 11:40 p.m. for over an hour. That's almost 24 hours from when he initially, it's beyond 24 hours from when he initially is with Naziah, or when he's last with Naziah. And so it's illogical to think that he was driving around with Naziah, visiting all of his girlfriends, or if he had done something to her previously, that she was in the car with him while he did that. And in fact, they took a cadaver dog around the car and didn't find anything, and they tested the vehicles, all of his vehicles, every car that he drove, for DNA, for any sign that Naziah had been in there, and they found nothing. And the call to Miss Johnson asking her to wipe down the Sentra that she used, that he had borrowed, is kind of irrelevant because she testified that she didn't do it. That she did nothing based on what he called to say, and nothing was found. we heard about a pink jumpsuit that was found. We didn't hear any testimony that anybody saw Neziah wearing this pink jumpsuit. She's not seen wearing it in any video. I don't believe that anybody even identified it as being hers. I don't believe there was any testimony from either Annette Harris or Shannon Harris stating, yes, we recognize that pink jumpsuit, that's something that Neziah wears. When did she have it? There was one blood stain on that jumpsuit. And the testimony from the forensic analyst, Breon Green, was that it was such a small stain that she was afraid she would consume it if she did additional testing. She tested it once and couldn't do any follow-up testing or confirmatory testing because she was afraid they were going to consume the sample. There was also no statistically significant support for finding Mr. Butts' DNA on that stain sample from the pink jumpsuit. And there was no statistically significant probability that his DNA was on the jumpsuit at all, that he had had any contact with the jumpsuit. And they took a lot of swabs of that jumpsuit. I believe the number was that forensic analyst Anderson testified to that it was 24 trillion times more likely to have originated from two unrelated unknown contributors than Jarvis Butts. And we heard about the black hoodie. And that black hoodie was significantly more weathered than the pink jumpsuit. We heard about that from the Border Patrol agent Barnes and other folks that came into contact with that sweatshirt, that it looked like it had been out in the weather much longer. And we don't have an explanation for that, but those appear to be tears in the top of the hood. They don't appear to be stab wounds, and they certainly don't appear to be bullet holes. There's weak support for conclusion that Mr. Butts was a contributor to the stain in the swabs of the black hoodie. The only real support for any DNA on the black hoodie was on the non-stained part. And there's testimony that Ms. Harris was wearing that hoodie on the 9th, that she was in Mr. Butts' Escalade when he and Mr. Wright picked her up after seeing her walking down Harper, that they were in the car driving up to Ypsilanti. And so the possibility that his DNA got on this non-stained part of the black hoodie is not evidence of premeditated murder in the context of all the ways that we heard somebody's DNA can get on a piece of clothing. And I kind of talked about this, but we've heard testimony that Mr. Butts drove both a Cadillac Escalade and a Nissan Sentra on January 9th and January 10th. There's a lot of pieces of those cars that were tested. Trunk carpet from various areas in both cars, the driver's floor mat, the driver's seat, the door handle, trunk speakers, the trunk frame. All of those things were swabbed for blood and nothing was found. We heard about a school ID card that belonged to Neziah. We heard Valerie Smith testify that she noticed it at some point in February, maybe a month or so after Neziah was last seen, and that she decided to pick it up 2.5 weeks after she first spotted it. But she was pretty clear that she only noticed it about 2.5 or about 2 weeks before, but that she looked at it every single day. Seemingly, if it had been there before then, she would have noticed it. When did it get there? We don't know. There was no evidence. There's no testimony as to that. And there was no other evidence found in the 7 Mile and Greenfield area, and there's no evidence that Mr. Butts was there. We talked a little bit about the medical records, but all they tell us is that Neziah Harris didn't have a life-threatening condition as of October 24th. They don't tell us anything about her physical condition between the 24th and the 9th, and they don't tell us that she was pregnant. They're just not relevant, except for the fact, I guess, that they don't tell us that she was pregnant, and she was there on September the 27th, according to her text messages. What we haven't heard in the last 3 to 4 days is anything about a murder weapon. We've heard that they collected guns, but we don't know if any of them actually operated, and they tested them for DNA, and there was nothing found. When did those guns get taken from a house? When did they get put back, if any of them had been used? And I mean, we just simply don't have any evidence as to whether they were even touched by Mr. Butts. But certainly there was no DNA from Mr. Harris on them. And if one was to use a gun to bludgeon somebody enough where they break the skin and bleed, there's going to be DNA on that gun. If somebody is shot at close range by a gun, there's likely to be DNA on that gun. They found no DNA on a gun. There was initially a testimony about all these knives that were found, and then when Mr. Riggins did a little bit of digging, well, one of them was a butter knife, one of them was rusted and under a seat, it looked like it had been there forever. There's only one knife that they were actually interested in, they sent it for testing, and there was nothing on it. And we know that they can test for blood even if something has been wiped clean, because they do that, and in fact, they did that in this case. They found no blood on anything that the prosecution is positing could have been a murder weapon. Motive is not an element of premeditated homicide. There's evidence that Mr. Butts and Isaiah had a sexual relationship. And we are, at this point, not contesting the bind over on those counts. That would explain why Mr. Butts would not want to be honest about why he was with Isaiah Harris. That would be enough to make somebody want to lie about their whereabouts or their connection to somebody. There's no evidence that it went any further than that from him. No evidence that he had been confronted by anybody about a sexual assault. No evidence that he was being threatened by Isaiah to expose him or get him in trouble if he didn't do something that she wanted him to do. By the time January 9th rolled around, they weren't really speaking that much. She was, in those text messages that we heard, getting frustrated with him for ignoring her. But never once did she say, well, if you don't talk to me, I'm going to tell everybody what we've been doing. And so there's a complete lack of any motive for him to respond in that way. And I would point the court to a case called People v. Fisher. And it's 193 Mishap 284. It's a 1992 case. And I've got copies. Okay. Does the court want?
Yes.
And I point the court to this case because it's a case where homicide was charged and no body was found. A woman named Joyce Fisher was killed, and I believe it was 8 years after her death, her husband was charged. He was convicted, and ultimately the appellate court reversed the conviction because the evidence was insufficient to submit the case to a jury. And so that was the error. And kind of the facts briefly are that Mr. and Mrs. Fisher were in the process of divorcing. It was a pretty contentious relationship. There had been lots of reports that he had been physically abusive to her. And she had even testified that he had threatened to kill her in mid-January of 1978, approximately 3 months before she disappeared. In April of 1978, apparently they were out together, they had lunch, and he was the last person to see her after that. She disappeared. Now, there was no substantial testimony in that trial regarding her reliability, her long or short-term plans, that she had children, that she was devoted to them, and that she wouldn't have had any reason to run away or leave. And so that gave rise to an inference that she was deceased. The prosecutor in that case offered no evidence of an act that resulted in Joyce Fisher's death. And the court previously has held that the victim's body, while it's not necessary to establish corpus delicti, there has to be something more. There has to be, in this case, either an admission or confession, physical evidence, or some kind of witness testimony. In that case, there was no physical evidence, such as bloodstains or a weapon linking the defendant to Joyce's death. He did not admit that he killed her, although the prosecutor offered equivocal statements there, that he seemed to say, well, things didn't happen quite that way, and where it made it sound like maybe he did have something or some knowledge. The prosecutor there presented lots of evidence of defendant's motive and opportunity to kill her, but noted that those are not elements of the crime. And inferences, the court says, may not be based on evidence that is uncertain or speculative, or merely raises a conjecture or a possibility. And they said, in that case, the evidence did not rise above the level of conjecture. And that's what we have here. We have conjecture. We have a lot of pieces of supposed evidence, but we have no connection. They don't connect to each other. They're puzzle pieces. When you put them together, there's no picture. There is no big picture because there is no act that can be testified to that Mr. Butts did, and there's nothing to support that act. There's no evidence that he had a gun and used it. There's no evidence that he had a knife and used it. In fact, the evidence that the prosecutor put forward disputes those theories. The idea that Mr. Butts was in some cover-up, the issue of his phone, I think was pretty well cleared up by Ms. Davis when she testified to the idea that for as long as she's known him, he's never wanted her to look at his phone. And mostly because he's been dealing with who knows how many other women. And that she had tried pretty much everything she could think of to get in that phone well before any of these allegations came about, and that she's never been able to. And so it makes sense that he would not want her to get in that phone, especially if he assumed he was coming home and wanted to have contact with her while he was serving his sentence in the Wayne County Jail, that she not know that she was not the only female he was dealing with. We acknowledge that probable cause is a low standard, but it isn't just limited to whether the prosecution has presented significant or sufficient evidence on each element of the offense, which we submit they have not. They also must determine that there's a reasonable ground of suspicion supported by circumstances sufficiently strong to warrant a cautious person to believe the accused is guilty. That definition of probable cause, or that characterization, comes from People v. Carter, which is 250 Mishap 510. And so you have to have both elements of the crime met, and also those elements have to be met by evidence that is sufficiently strong to believe that it is relevant, that it actually proves what it is saying that it proves. And here we have conjecture, we have speculation, we have supposition, and we have somebody who, he did have something to hide. But there's no evidence that he did anything about that. He didn't threaten her, he didn't ask her, or say if anybody finds out that, I will go to jail, or you could go to jail, or you could be hurt. There was nothing like that in any of those conversations that we saw. So, Your Honor, even by the relatively low standard of probable cause, we submit that there is insufficient evidence of both the idea that Mr. Butts did something to cause the death of Ms. Harris, and that he intended to kill her, or that intent to kill was premeditated. We don't know what happened when she left his shop on January the 9th around 9 o'clock. But I think it's safe to say we know she didn't go to his house where Angel Leonard was, or Angel Leonard would probably be here in court and telling us what a weird interaction she had with him, and why it was strange that he wouldn't come inside the house, or why he wouldn't let her out by the car where he was. We don't have any evidence that she went with him to the Park West Motel. We don't have any evidence that they were together beyond 8:30, 9 o'clock on January the 9th. And for that, we're asking the court to deny bind over on count 1, premeditated murder of the first degree.
Rebuttal?
Thank you. First, I'm going to start with talking about People v. Fisher that Ms. Quick just referenced. And it is important to note that this case is distinguishable for the following reasons. One, we're talking about a different standard. This was a trial issue, a directed verdict standard, where the court is saying at trial beyond a reasonable doubt. First of all and foremost, it's distinguishable for that reason. Secondly, though, the court in Fisher said, in this case, there was no physical evidence such as bloodstains or a weapon linking defendant to Joyce's death. In this case, we have bloodstains. We have bloodstains on the hoodie that was found at 7 Mile and Bird, where the defendant spent 2 hours on the night of the 10th going into the 11th. That places them together in the same spot, and is very strong evidence that Ms. Harris is in fact dead. Secondly, though, Judge, having dealt with People v. Fisher, Ms. Quick talked about the 9th and 10th, that no one saw the defendant with Messiah for that day going into the 10th and into the 11th. However, we heard from one of his significant others or girlfriends that he was secret, that he didn't want anyone looking at his phone. And we certainly know that he knows how to keep different women and or girls away from each other. For example, I believe it was Shannon Harris that testified that she was familiar with an address of Outer Drive in Belfort, but she had no idea other than the fact that she would pick the defendant up there at different times. We know through other testimony that the defendant was dating someone that lived there. And with respect to Ms. Quick saying that Messiah never threatened him, never did anything, I'm not sure if this one text message was highlighted by, I see it in this case when she testified, but on November 27th, 2023, at 23 hours and 37 minutes UTC time, Messiah said to the defendant, "When I see you, I'm a fuck you, tell you regret not answering my calls," which I would submit to this court as a threat. And then just over a month later, she says she goes missing at the hands of the defendant. And Ms. Quick also talked about the driving around that Cordell and Jarvis were doing and how it was an unplanned meetup with Messiah on the 9th. However, that may be true from Cordell's perspective, because he wouldn't have known what Jarvis's plan was at that time. But clearly, on the 9th, send okay if you've seen the message so I can delete your number, and then the defendant's response, okay. And Jarvis was the one driving per Cordell's testimony. Now, Ms. Quick also talked about the knives and how the knives found in the defendant's car of the one that was tested came back negative, and that's true. We cannot dispute that. However, we know that that was more than a month after giving the defendant plenty of time to clean it. But beyond that, Judge, this case is one where the defendant thought to, and successfully did, hide the body. And it's a common sense inference that if he thought to hide the body, he would also think to get rid of the murder weapon at the same time. And Judge, Ms. Quick is right. We are talking about a probable cause standard. And as I said, the question is, did the defendant with premeditation probably murder Messiah Harris? And I submit to this court that the answer is yes. And circumstantial evidence, as is noted in the jury instructions at trial court or in circuit court, is just as good as direct evidence. And yes, this is a circumstantial case, but when we put those circumstances together, including the physical evidence, the cell phone evidence, which I would equate with physical evidence for purposes of that, as well as the defendant's opportunity and motive, the picture becomes very clear that the defendant, Jarvis Butts, took the life of Messiah Harris to protect himself from the eventual discovery of his child that he was going to have with her, or at the very least thought he was going to have with her. I ask this court to bind over as charged with the addition or increase of the criminal sexual conduct second degree. Thank you.
As far as Fisher, I agree with the people that this case is distinguishable. This is a case regarding a trial. And the one thing I had highlighted in pink was the quote, "In this case, there was no physical evidence such as bloodstains or a weapon leaking defendant to Joyce's death." In this case, we don't have the same facts or circumstances. I do agree, this is a circumstantial case, and circumstantial evidence is sufficient for a bind over and even conviction. Today is January 9th, 2025, exactly 1 year, from the day Messiah Harris disappeared. Before I get into the charges and the main charge of premeditated first-degree murder, I have to speak on Messiah Harris and the community who failed her. And I am only presented with certain evidence. I don't know the whole story. The attorneys know more than me. The family knows more than me. But from what I have heard over the last 4 days and 5 days total, is that several people failed her. I don't know where her mother is. I don't know anything other than that she was forced to live in a home where she was not protected or given the adequate attention and love. I don't know where her father is. I don't have any mention of him in her life, no presence. To Cordell, AKA King, and all the men who saw Jarvis Butts hanging out and always around these young girls, including Naziah, and his 9-year-old daughter going up to the shop to clean up his shop. The school counselor who never showed up, or the person who was supposed to show up if that counselor was absent, after Naziah was on the floor on the day she went missing, saying that she needed to speak to someone and speak to a counselor. There's no mention of CPS, but I wonder what their involvement was over the years, because this was not just a one-year thing. There are text messages at least from 2022. To her adoptive grandmother, Annette Harris, whose testimony, in my opinion, was very questionable. I understand why the people put her on the stand to establish Naziah's residence and the houses on Bedford and the regular routine, to establish also that Naziah was not a runaway child, that she was not a bad kid. I do believe she adopted Naziah. I do believe that she had 6 kids in the house. I believe that Naziah had on a dark hoodie the day she went missing, and that she had on red and black Nikes that day. What is hard to believe is that the defendant never came into the house as she testified. And there was also a minor that testified that he did as well. Text messages that show between him and Naziah that he did in the basement, saying he was going to the shower, stealing her panties. He was always lurking around that house and asking for Janiyah and Zaniyah, from what I know. I even thought about the breakfast routine and saying that all the kids like eating breakfast at school. Did they have a choice? I don't know. But to always send those girls up there to clean up the shop raises questions. And how were there 2 women in that house who had birthed children themselves who did not notice that Naziah was pregnant, and I believe she was, and not having her period anymore? But then after hearing text messages today, begging Jarvis for pads as if she didn't have anyone else to get them for her. And what stood out the most was when Annette Harris stood on the stand, and she learned around 6 p.m. that Naziah did not come home from school, and said she looked around for her and decided to wait until the next morning to call the police. Without a tear, without emotion, or any expression of being devastated. And to her Aunt Shannon, who also showed no emotion, expression of being devastated from Naziah going missing. She stated that she had friends help look for Naziah, but was directed to just wait until the morning to call the police. A grown woman who likely suspected something strange going on didn't feel the need to call the police either. They were both able to go to sleep at night without hearing from Naziah or having any indication that she was coming home that night. And of course, the defendant, who I will get to in a minute. I don't know who else failed Naziah, but the community did. As far as the people establishing probable cause, I will focus on count 1, as it's been stated that there is no contention with counts 2 and 3. And count 3, I will amend based off of the motion and the testimony I heard that Naziah was 12 and not 13 at the time that Jarvis Butts had sexual intercourse with her. The prosecution is correct. You do not have to have a body to establish first-degree premeditated murder. It would have been a much shorter exam had her body been found, but this is where we are. In the last 365 days, no text messages. We all heard today and yesterday that she was very active and frequently texted. No social media for a year. We heard through testimony that she was also active on social media. No phone calls, which she was also able to do according to testimony. No physical sighting of her by anyone. She never came back to school. No one has seen her. Medical records dated from July 2014 to October 2023 indicated that she had no life-threatening medical issues that would lead to a natural cause of death. The black hoodie found in the area of 7 Muhlenberg with her DNA and blood on it. The holes in the hoodie consistent with some sort of struggle violence or weapon being used. And we know that there were no holes in that hoodie when she worked at school. We saw a picture of her in a black hoodie on her last day that everyone saw her. I do believe her grandma testified truthfully about the sweatshirt that she had on and that was practically new. And the border agent who said that no evidence of animals would have destroyed the clothing or the shoes to possibly lead to animals tearing up that hoodie. The clear glasses found in the blue Nissan the day after she went missing. The behavior of the defendant when he snatched those glasses. They looked exactly like the glasses she had on in her last picture, according to the witness. The shoes that her brother described as the same shoes that were found also in the area of 7 Mile and Bird near the hoodie. While this is still probable cause, the evidence all points to Jarvis Butts. His locations, him being seen with her last, the abortion searches, the abrupt silence between the two of them in text messages, and the constant lies he told throughout the entire investigation. And they were proven to be lies with text messages and other testimony. We may never know what happened, but from what I heard today and over the last 4 or 5 days, it appears he intended to perform what he thought was a do-it-yourself abortion on Nasiah and went south, and instead of seeking medical attention for her, he intentionally killed her and tried his best to cover it up. As much as I want her to be alive today, there is at least probable cause to show and believe that she is dead and that she was murdered by Jarvis Butts. Mr. Butts, stand up. You've been sitting over there for 4 days with your head down, hidden between and behind your attorneys with your mask on and taking vigorous notes. I want you to pay attention and listen to everything I have to say. I have been trying to figure out for the last 5 days, you. At one point, I thought you were cognitively impaired in the beginning of this exam. And then maybe you had the brain of a 10-year-old, and that's why you were doing such things. But as I heard more and more testimony, you're just a true definition of a pedophile. Watching you laugh and brag about all the women you have with different women and the children and the girlfriends, and making babies to groom them and having them in your presence, cleaning up, quote, cleaning up your shop, and the little girls around you has landed you here today. You groomed Nasiah. You played mind games with her. We all heard that. You controlled her emotionally. She was exposed to so much at such a young age. The text messages between you two were disgusting to hear. And to think that she had you saved in her phone as bae for life. Nasiah deserves so much more. And while I mentioned other people that failed her, Jarvis Butts, you are the monster in this whole picture. She did deserve love from her parents and everyone who was in her life. She was ignored, she was neglected, and you took complete advantage of that. She wanted someone to love her, and she will never know what that feels like. Your children deserve more. As much as defense counsel has raised issues on count 1, all that has done is raise the question of fact for the trier of fact, which means that this will be for a jury or a judge to hear at Third Circuit. I pray for the healing of all the victims and the young girls and possibly boys who have come into contact with you. As a community, we should look at this case as a prime example of how much work we have to do when it comes to protecting our children and especially our Black girls. I pray for closure and healing for all those who have been traumatized by you. And for you, Jarvis Butts, I wish you a speedy trial and that justice be delivered. Your bind over date is January 16th at 9:00 a.m. Anything else for the record?
Okay, so pretty much on today, well actually tomorrow, which is Thursday, January the 16th, Jarvis will be back in court and this is going to be the start of the trial. But the judge spoke some facts. Um and what I'll do is I'll come back and we'll review the grandmother because the grandmother actually adopted Naziah. And like the judge said, she was saying, they asked her, well, what was the schedule, um, for the kids that were up under your care? She said, well, I will wake them up at 6 o'clock and they would have to be at school. She would take them about 7:15, 7:30, and they would eat breakfast at school because they like to eat breakfast at school. Um, the judge also pointed out, she was like, I don't really even know if that was a choice. It pretty much sound like, these are my rules and this is how it's gonna go. You better eat that free school lunch and just be satisfied with that. That was very heartbreaking. But I do no. Before we go any further, I want to play this one right here. This is the business associate. His name is what is his name? His name is Cordell. So this is Cordell. They got Cordell on a stand now. Let's get into it. Let me bring him up. So Cordell was his business partner.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Mr. Wright.
Good morning.
And Mr. Wright, do you have a nickname?
Yes.
And what's your nickname?
King.
Is that King?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. How old are you?
37.
When's your birthday?
11/17.
And Mr. Wright, back in January 2024, were you on an MDOC tether?
Yes, I was.
And what dates were you on tether from?
From March 14th, 23 to March 28th of 24.
And what were your tether restrictions back then?
I could leave the house from 6 in the morning. I had to be back in by 9 p.m.
Mr. Wright, do you know someone named Jarvis Butts?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Jarvis Butts?
I first met him. We worked together at a shop called Frank's. And then we owned the shop together.
And do you see Jarvis Butts in the courtroom today?
No.
Yeah. Were you able to stand up so you can look around?
Yes. No.
When did you meet Mr. Butts?
2018.
And you said you two worked together initially at a place called Frank's?
Frank's.
All right. Where was Frank's at?
He has a couple locations. He has 7, but the one I met him at was on Warren and Neff.
Warren and Neff. Okay. And what locations of Frank's did you work at with Mr. Butts?
Warren and Neff.
Third man approach.
Yes.
And Mr. Wright, I'm approaching those proposed exhibits 4, 5, and 6. Can you look at these and tell me if you recognize those?
I recognize this one, and this one.
And those are those a fair and accurate depiction of the Frank's Auto Shops? At least 2 of them on Warren and the other one maybe on Harper?
Yes.
Okay, which is the one that's on Harper?
The last one on the inside.
Okay, and that's People's Proposed Exhibit 6?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I move for the admission of People's 4, 5, and 6.
Any objection? No objection, Your Honor. They'll be admitted as People's Exhibits 4, 5, and 6.
Thank you, Judge. How long did you work at Frank's with Mr. Butts?
A few years.
About how many years would you estimate?
2.
And when did that change from Frank's to another shop?
Maybe in 23 sometime.
Okay. Would it be earlier in the year or later in the year?
Maybe maybe in May. Well, maybe April, May.
And then where did you guys work then?
We got a shop together on 9,000 Connor.
And what is at 9,000 Connor?
A sicko, a car wash, and our shop was in the middle of both.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Gray, I'm handing you what's marked for People's Proposed Exhibits 7 and 8. Can you look at those and tell me if you recognize them?
Yes, I don't know.
Okay. And are those a fair and accurate depiction of your shop at 9,000 Connor?
Yes, it is.
And Your Honor, I put the admission of People's Proposed Exhibits 7 and 8.
Any objection? No objection. They'll be admitted as People's Exhibits 7 and 8.
Thank you. Who was it that you mainly worked with at 9,000 Connor?
I'm sorry.
Who was it that you worked with at 9,000 Connor?
Jarvis.
I want to take you back to when you were working at Frank's with Mr. Butts. Did you ever see Mr. Butts with any children there?
Yes.
And specifically, did you see him with any young girl children?
Yes.
And did you know who those were?
Yes.
Who were they?
His daughter, his niece.
Daughters and niece. What about any boys?
Yes.
And who were they?
His sons.
How often would you see him with children there at Frank's?
Sporadically.
And at 9,000 Connor, did you see Mr. Butts with any children then?
Yes.
Any girls?
Yes.
And who would they be?
His daughter.
And what about any boys?
Yes.
Who would they be?
His sons.
And how often would you see him with children at 9,000 Connor?
Sporadic.
And as it relates to this case, it's fair to say that you spoke with Detroit police a few times?
Yes, about 4.
About 4 times? Okay. That first time that you talked to Detroit police, do you recall about when that was?
The first time was the day before Valentine's Day, so like February 13th.
February 13th, and is that of 2024?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and at that time, were you presented with a jail call?
Yes.
Okay. And who was that jail call with?
Jarvis.
Okay. And who was he talking to?
Me.
All right. And what was the topic of that jail call?
He called to ask would I receive a cell phone out of a truck for him.
And were you familiar with what truck he was asking you to get it from?
Yes.
What truck was that?
It was a Z71 Chevy Suburban.
And did you know who that truck belonged to?
Yeah, his baby mom or somebody he was dealing with.
Okay. And Do you recall listening to that jail call?
Yeah, I recall.
Okay. If I, I would move to admit the jail call from, I believe it's February 8th, 2024, between Mr. Wright and Mr. Jarvis Butts.
Any objection?
No objection.
What is the exhibit number on that?
Sorry, that's exhibit number 1.
Will be admitted as exhibit 1?
Thank you, Judge. And may I publish?
Yes, I didn't co-host.
Thank you, Judge. And for the record, I am playing People's Exhibit 1.
That's it.
This is a one-time free 3-minute call from an inmate at Lee County Jail. Your phone does not collect calls. This call has been provided by Helmet as a courtesy for friends and family. You cannot receive additional calls from this inmate until you call prepaid. We can take your credit or debit card information over the phone and connect you immediately back to your calls. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. Press 1 to accept all communications from this. Thank you for using Sounding.
My guy, what's up, man?
Nah, shit, man. What's happening?
Nah, shit, man. How you feeling? My bad, I missed your call. I was working like a motherfucker.
I figured they said you was up there banging, said something banging.
Yeah, you know it.
What's up, my nigga? Who is that, Tim? What's up, boy?
You know it.
Hey, shit. Man, I'm calling, man. These bitches, they put my money on my motherfucking books, bro.
Oh, yeah, take a minute for them to put that shit on there. Even if you walk in with it, man, they be playing it crazy.
Yeah, man.
I swear to God. Hey, you got a machine and shit. You show you straight? You need something? I mean, I'm getting a couple hours for that.
Yeah, I have money on my books, nigga. I came in with money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they put this shit on my hookup. I was up on the average. I didn't come up $0. That's some bullshit.
That shit crazy.
Yeah.
How is it, though?
Man, that's some bullshit. I'm really gonna be quarantined on this whole shit, bro.
Oh, yeah, they got you on that quarantine club for how long? 3 days?
I don't know how long, nigga. Shit, I'm about to be the only one in this bitch on my part.
You say, what happened?
I said, shit, I'm about to be the remember me and you know, this motherfucker, you want these boys on this bitch.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
What you need?
Huh?
No, I was asking what that customer needs. Man, listen. You straight?
Yeah, my nigga.
Huh?
So yeah, I'm good, oh shit, yeah. You got passion number, right?
Yeah.
So Dig, I need you to call her one thing and get that truck up there, nigga. Get my phone out there back seat, bro.
Oh man. All right. Well, I'm going to get the truck up there. What tell her?
Tell her you fuck around and lost your car that there too when we was moving the radio.
Okay.
I'm see.
All right.
You have 1 minute remaining for this call.
Reach my hand that back seat.
Where? Yeah.
So you reach behind that back seat, bro. The box right there. Straight behind the middle of that back seat, bro.
Okay, under it or in the back or in the back
In
thing?
the back, right in the back of the seat, bro.
Okay.
I'm on the second row.
I got what I need the key. You know you took the key. You took the key to the gate.
It's the same key.
I don't got that key to it.
Yeah, you do. It's the same key to the lock and the door.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. All right.
Yeah, it's the same key, bro.
Now, you know I got you. I'll put the money on the phone later, man. When I get around, baby, I will put the credit card. You?
It's all I got the key on that. I told my wife and have her bring up the key.
No, I don't need it though. If you send the same one, I got it. So I don't need it right now anyway. Just when I get the scrap out of there.
Okay.
successful in getting that cell phone from the vehicle like Mr. Butts asked you to?
She came up there, but no, I wasn't successful. It wasn't there.
Wasn't there? Okay.
When we say she, who you refer to?
Tasha,
And who's Tati that you know of?
his baby mom.
Okay. Did you look for it in the vehicle?
Yeah, I looked for it.
Okay. And you were unsuccessful in finding it?
Yes.
And I'm sure I want to talk to you now about the second time that you were speaking with Detroit police. Would that be fair to say that was just a couple days after your first time?
It was not long, a few weeks maybe. I was off tether at that point, I believe.
Okay. And do you recall talking about fixing a red Jaguar and going to Ypsilanti?
Yes, I do.
Tell me about how many times did you and Mr. Butts go to Ypsilanti?
I believe it was either 2 or 3.
All right. And how did that come about? Whose red Jaguar is this?
My son's grandma.
Your son's grandma.
So she called, said she was having some problems with it and asked if we would come look at it, which is not unusual. We do house calls depending on the person and where it's located, but this is my son's grandma, so of course we're gonna make the exception. She called and said she was having problems with the car, asked if we would come look at it. Went, assessed the car at her house the first time. I think we made a minor repair there. Not to the extent that it was the problem that she was having after the fact.
Okay. So where does red Jaguar locate when you guys go out to see it?
Mr. My son's grandma driveway in Ypsilanti off Michigan Avenue, I believe.
All right. And who goes with you out there that first time?
Jarvis.
Okay. It's just you and Jarvis Butts?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys go out there and you assess, make a minor repair.
Yeah.
Does it completely fix the car? For
that problem, yes.
Okay. And then is there another time that you end up having to do work on this red Jaguar?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that.
She drove the Jaguar for a while. It was doing fine. And then she said it was leaking something. I asked her what it was leaking. She said she didn't know. I asked her if she could get it towed to the shop. She said, yeah.
So that was your shop at 9000 Connor?
Yes.
Okay. And who works on it at 9000 Connor?
Me and Jarvis.
Okay. And what do you do when you finish fixing? Do you ever fixing the red Jaguar?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you do when you finish fixing it?
We take it back to her. I called her first and asked her how she was planning on retrieving the vehicle. She said she was going to tow it, and I didn't want to cost her no more money, so I told her that we could bring it.
Okay. And do you recall if that was on or about January 9th of 2024?
It was on.
It was on that day?
Yes.
Okay. So on that day, before you take tell me about how that day started for you.
I woke up. I typically leave the house at 6 because that's the time I could leave. So I went to the gym. I got to the shop probably around 8:30. I don't know who opened the shop. I can't really recall which one of us opened it, but Jarvis may have been there already. A few cars came in, then the Jaguar probably got there maybe around 9 o'clock. I assessed the Jaguar. Jarvis left for a moment. I had another mechanic, being it's a foreign car, so I had a foreign car mechanic on call to help with the work, but he was busy, so he came, said he wouldn't have time to do it, so I think I Googled it, seen how it was done, and I proceeded taking the water pump off.
Okay. About that work that day?
Yes, he was there.
Okay. What do you guys being you and Mr. Butts, do as it relates to work on the night?
I think we had a few cars that came in that needed some minor repairs. Between that and the Jaguar, we was jumping in and out of the Jaguar job, and the cars that could pull it up, maybe oil change, tune up, whatever, et cetera, so forth was. But we was mainly working on the Jaguar, trying to get the water pump off, as it is a hard job to do.
And do you always have all of your parts on stock or on your person in stock with you?
No, we call either AutoZone, Mansfield, or the auto stores that have them.
Okay. And did you have to go get any auto parts on January 9th?
Yes, we had to go get the water pump for the Jaguar, as well as some other parts, I believe, for other cars.
Okay. And when you go and get parts, is it usually just one of you, both of you, or something else?
That depends. If it's a car there, then one of us will stay. If it's not a car, we can go together sometime.
Okay. And on January 9th of 2024, did you guys, did one of you guys go to the auto parts store, or did you both go?
We both went.
Both went? Okay. Tell me what happens when you go to the auto parts store.
Before that, I called them. They ordered the water pump, so we went and picked it up when they called and said it was in. We got in the truck, went to AutoZone, got the water pump. On our way back from AutoZone, I believe we forgot something, so we ended up turning back around, going back to AutoZone, grabbed whatever we forgot, came back, and on our way back, we was coming down Harper. Jarvis said, "I see my niece right there. She walking." We pulled into Angel's liquor store. I still didn't see her. He pointed across my face, said she right there. She was coming across the street at that time. She got in the truck with us. She spoke, hi King, hi Jay, and we proceeded back to the shop.
Okay. So when you guys are driving to these auto parts stores, who's driving?
Jarvis,
Okay, and where?
passenger seat.
Okay. And you said when you guys are heading back to the shop the second time, that's when you said Jarvis spots someone?
Yes.
Who does he say that he spots?
His niece.
His niece, okay. And you recognize his niece?
Yes, when I see her, when he pointed her out to me, yes, I recognize her walking across the street.
Okay. And so you guys pull over. Where's she get into the car at?
I believe she getting behind me, so the back seat behind me.
Okay. Does Jarvis say anything to her?
Yeah, she speaks to both of us, and we speak back.
Okay. What does he say to her?
Hi.
Hi. And where do you guys go after you pick up his niece?
Back to the shop.
Okay, and that's at 9,000 Connor?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you guys do when you get back to 9,000 Connor?
He back in. We get out. We proceeded working on the Jaguar. I may have got out the car first with the parts, and he was in the car with her for a second. I got out, started working on the Jaguar.
And does what happens next? What do you guys do?
I believe she get out, get into the front seat, reposition herself to the front seat of his truck. It was colder that day. I believe she started the truck. We started working on the Jaguar, putting the parts back on. It took a little minute. Like I said, it was a difficult job, so it took a while. At some point, I believe his truck ran out of gas, so we had to stop what we were doing to push his truck to the gas pump so he could get some gas.
So you said that she gets out of the car that you guys were in?
Yes. No, we was always in Jarvis' truck.
Okay.
So she gets out of the back seat and repositions herself to the front seat so she can start the cover.
And tell me what kind of car or what kind of truck does Jarvis drive?
Escalade.
And what color?
It's pearl white.
Okay. What if you can see, what is his niece doing while you guys are working on at the shop?
I believe she's on her cell phone, I believe.
Does Jarvis ever take his niece anywhere while you guys are working at the shop?
No.
No, okay. Did you ask him if he was gonna take her home at all?
I believe I asked him, was he gonna drop her off when the truck ran out of gas? We had to push it to the pump. It was just a distraction from work, so I asked, was he gonna drop her off? No.
And do you finish working? Did you finish working on the Jaguar that day?
Yes.
And what happens after you finish up on the Jaguar?
I called my son grandma and asked her how she was gonna retrieve the vehicle. She said she was gonna tow it. I told her she didn't have to do that. That was just spending extra money. So I asked Jarvis, was it all right if we dropped it off? He said yes. And we started making preparations to do so.
Do you recall you guys finished the Jaguar and prepared to leave?
Right around 7:30 or somewhere around there.
When do you guys eventually leave the shop?
Yes.
Okay. And tell me about who all leaves the shop?
Me, Jarvis, and his niece.
Okay. And tell me about the driving arrangements.
Drove my 300 and Jarvis drove the Jaguar.
And where was his niece at?
She was with him in the front seat of the Jaguar.
Now, are you able to recall what his niece looked like that day?
Yes. Faintly, but yes.
Do you remember what kind of clothing she was wearing?
I remember she had a jacket on. Like I said, a coat. It was cold, so I think it was colorful.
Colorful?
Yeah.
May I approach?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright, I'm approaching you with people's proposed exhibit 2. And I'm going to direct you to the top left corner. Can you tell me, is there anything that you recognize in that?
The jacket in channel 1.
Okay. And is that a fair and accurate depiction of the jacket that you've seen his niece, Jarvis's niece, wearing that day?
Yes.
And I move with the admission of people's proposed exhibit 2.
Any objection? Okay. We'll be admitted as people's exhibit 2.
Thank you. And I'm going to show you your man approach. And I'm showing you its Market Fields Pros Exhibit 3. Do you recognize what I just handed you?
Yes.
Thanks. And is that a fair and accurate depiction of Jarvis's niece as you remember? In 2024.
Yes.
Okay. And is that the same niece that went with you to Ypsilanti?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And you're moving for the admission of people's proposed exhibit 3?
No objection. Okay, it'll be admitted as people's exhibit 3.
Thank you. So, you guys are driving to Ypsilanti. You said you're driving in your 300, and Jarvis is driving the Jaguar with his niece.
Yes.
Okay. About how long does it take you guys to get to Ypsilanti?
It was raining that day, so about.
And when you get to Ypsilanti, what do you do?
We get out, we park the car, get out, we go in. My son's grandma and I believe his auntie was there as well, so they greeted us. They'd spoken to him before, so they greet him. And then my son, grandma asked who the little girl was.
And did you introduce the little girl?
No,
Okay. Who introduced the little girl?
Jarvis did.
And what did Jarvis introduce her as?
His niece.
And about how long do you guys stay in Delaney?
Not long, maybe 15 minutes or so. My son, auntie had to go get the rest of our money that my grandma didn't have, so she went to the ATM.
What do you guys do when she went to the ATM?
Talking.
Okay.
Talking. She was just telling us about other work she needed to get around her house, etc., so on and so forth.
And was Mr. Butts with you the whole time?
Yes.
So you guys eventually leave Ypsilanti.
Yes.
And tell me about the driving arrangements coming or leaving Ypsilanti.
Which is mine. We get in. Travis in the front. I believe Nazaya sat behind me.
Is that behind you?
Yes.
Okay. So and is there any kind of talking or conversation when you guys are driving?
No, I got sounds in my car, so no.
And do you recall about what time you guys, where do you guys go when you leave Ypsilanti?
Back to 9,000 Connor.
Do you recall about what time you guys get back to 9,000 Connor?
Probably around 8:45. I was cutting it close on the tether.
What do you do when you get back to 9,000 Connors?
Opened up the shop door where he left his truck in one of the bays, so we opened up that bay door, went through the gas station because that's the way we entered the shop. Went through the gas station, opened the shop, opened one of the bay doors. I went to the back and started splitting the money that we had made for the day, and separating the receipts.
So,
Getting this truck.
do you recall where at this truck she got into?
Passenger seat.
Is that front passenger, back passenger, or something else?
Front passenger.
And where's your butt at?
Back in the back with me, separating the cash.
And when you leave the shop,
No, I left first.
you left first. Okay. So when you leave, who's still at the shop?
Jarvis and me.
Do you see them leave the shop at all?
No.
And have you seen, Jarvis's niece, the one that was with you on the 9th? Have you seen her since January 9th, 2024?
No.
Now I want to talk about the day after that you guys went to FC, so January 10th. Do you recall if Mr. Butts was at work that day?
I don't think he was.
What makes you think that he wasn't?
3 times, 4 times. No reason for him to call me if he was standing right next to me.
Judge, I don't think he's speculating, so he's putting police.
Maybe call for some reason, but no, speculation.
Can you ask the question? Re-ask the question.
Yes. So you said that you don't believe he was at work because he would call you, or he called you so often?
He called me. We had a 30-minute conversation on one account, and then we had another conversation about 15 minutes. So,
Okay. So that makes you believe in your mind that he was actually on the you?
What's the question first?
It's just asking, based on those conversations, that Mr. Butts was not at the shop with him. I don't think that's leading. It's stating a conclusion.
He said he already stated that he wasn't just a shot. We didn't move. So I'll overrule.
You can.
one more time.
So based on the length of those phone calls and the times of them, did that make you believe that Mr. Butts was not the shop?
Right.
Did Jarvis Butts ever mentioned to you about his niece being missing?
No.
Have you talked to Mr. Butts aside from the call that we played since turning himself in?
No.
And do you know someone, do you know any of Jarvis's siblings?
Yes.
And which sibling do you,
I met his brother and I met his sister.
you talked to his sister? Well, start that. Would his sister ever come to the shop?
Sporadically.
Okay. And are there times that you talk to her?
Yes.
Okay. And had you talked to her about Jarvis's niece being missing?
After the post questioned me, I believe she came up there and we.
And Mr. Wright, I'd asked you earlier about if you'd seen Mr. Butts in the courtroom, so that you couldn't see him. Okay. Yeah, I broke. Yes. And I'm showing you People's Proposed Exhibit 9. Can you tell me if you recognize that photo?
Yes.
And who is it in that photo?
Jarvis.
Okay. And that's Jarvis Butts?
Yes.
Okay. Now I move for the admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 9.
Exhibit as People's Exhibit 9.
Thank you. And Mr. Wright, I kind of want to direct your attention back to People's Proposed Exhibit 3, or People's Exhibit 3, I'm sorry. And can you see it from here where I'm holding it?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know who this person in this photo is?
Yes.
Okay. And who do you know her as now?
Nazaya.
The next time you see Jarvis Butts after January 9th, 2024, do you see any injuries on him?
No, I don't believe I've seen any injuries.
Good for the judge. Okay, Ross. Thank you.
Good morning.
You said that, I believe, in your testimony that you have known Butts since about 2018, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you said you met at Frank's, the shop that you looked at.
That's correct.
And you said you guys worked together at Frank's for about 2 years?
That's correct.
And so that means in about 2020, you opened up the shop in Connor?
No, in 2021, I went to.
And so you came back
I came back to the same thing.
at Frank's?
Yes,
And what year was that?
that was 2023.
Okay, and so then how long after you came back were you the two of you at Frank's together?
Maybe a few months to maybe like the middle of the year. So maybe around either around April. It was still a little cold outside.
Okay. So like early spring.
Yeah.
You think that you opened up the shop at 9?
Yes, it could have been earlier than that, but yes, around.
Business partners?
Yes,
Did you give them business partners?
yes,
Okay. You also consider Mr. Butts a friend at that point?
yes,
As far as the business arrangement, you said it was a 50 split. Did you split it every day at the end of the day? Or?
every day at the end of the day.
Now back around the beginning of 2024, end of 2023, were you seeing a woman in Clinton Township?
A woman in Clinton Township?
Yes. A friend of a woman named Shannon Harris?
In 24?
Yes.
No.
Or ever?
Yes.
When were you seeing her?
Probably was 2000 and maybe 19 or 20.
So before you went?
Before I went to prison.
Okay. Did you and Mr. Butts ever have a falling out about that?
No.
Now you and Mr. Butts, did you talk about your personal lives?
Sometimes, yes.
You just spent good days at work together, right?
Right.
So presumably it came up.
Of course.
Talk about girlfriends.
Of course.
Did women often come to the shop looking for Mr. Butts? Did he talk to you about the very women that he would be seeing or juggling maybe?
That happened.
Okay. Did it sometimes cause drama in the shop?
It happened.
Women would come up and confront Mr. Butts,
It happens.
maybe about other women that he was seeing?
It happens.
Did you ever feel like that was affecting the business?
No, thanks.
What about at the business that you owned in Connor?
It didn't happen as much.
Didn't have as much in Connor?
Right.
Sometime, I guess, the two of you were working together. You had a friend that was, I guess, talking to or trying to date one of Mr. Butts' daughters. Is that correct?
That happened.
The daughter was 21, 22.
She was somewhere around, not 100% certain, but yeah, around that age, 20, 21, 22.
And that caused an issue for Mr. Butts.
It did.
He got pretty upset with his friend.
It did. I was in prison at the time, so yes, I was involved directly.
Okay. Did you ever hear about an altercation that happened between the two of them?
Some kind of altercation did occur, yes.
Was it your impression that Mr. Butts was pretty protective of her?
Yeah.
Do you know how many children Mr. Butts has?
13?
And you said that some of them would come to the shop.
Yes, that happened.
But at the shop in Connor, you said his sons would come,
His son would come sometimes and stay the day with us.
his daughter.
She would come sometimes and stay the day with us.
And what's her name? Do you recall?
No, I don't want to misname it.
Okay.
I think it's something with a J or something like that, though. I'm not sure.
Was she like a teenager?
Yeah. She'd come up there sometime, but not really. It was when they 9, 7, 8, 9, somewhere around there.
Okay. And then his niece would also come?
Yes.
Would she come typically with?
When I first met her, yes, that's how I with his daughter. She would always come with his daughter. They would come up there sometimes to get air in their tires. Maybe money, just typical kid stuff.
Did he ever, or did the two of you ever have them like doing chores around the shop?
Sometimes.
Did Mr. Butts talk to you about his children?
Yes.
Did you talk about spending time with them?
Yes, I believe he lived with the majority of them.
And you said that, you mentioned Tasha, she's one of the mothers of some of his children,
Yes.
correct?
No, I don't believe so.
Now, you said, I believe in your testimony, that you had been to Ypsilanti twice with Mr. Butts. So,
Or 3 times, one of the. Yes.
possibly could have been 3.
It could have possibly been 3. I'm not 100% certain.
Now, one of the his niece was, you said, on January the 9th.
First time I seen her by herself, yes.
And that's because you have a picture up on Harper.
Yes.
Did Mr. Butts seem surprised that he saw her?
I'm not sure. I couldn't really, I wasn't really paying attention to his expression. He just pointed to me.
And at that time, you only knew her as his niece.
Yes.
You didn't have any idea what her name was at that time.
No.
And in fact, the reason you learned her name was when you identified that pic that was just shown to you, and the police told you what her name was. Is that fair to say?
That's fair, sir.
With Mr. Butts and his niece, did you see any inappropriate behavior or anything that made you raise your eyebrows between the two of them?
No.
What about any of the other times that his niece would have been there in the shop? Did you ever behavior that made you question about was
I
inappropriate?
said I have.
Now, the 3 of you rode back from Ypsilanti on January 9th. That was your testimony, right?
Yes.
Was there any conversation between Mr. Butts and his niece in the car?
There was no conversation between really nobody. I had the music on.
And I'm going to back up to earlier in the day when the 3 of you came to the shop the first time after you picked her up on Harper.
Okay.
You said that she pretty much stayed in Mr. Butts' car the whole time.
Yes.
She said she was on her phone.
Yes.
Did you ever leave the shop at all after that before you guys went to Ypsilanti?
Maybe in the
Not really, just the attached gas station.
yeah, maybe to the gas station. I'm not sure if I actually physically left the building. I'm not sure.
Would have been for more than like 5 or 10 minutes.
Use the bathroom, so maybe 10 minutes tops if I had to leave.
You never have to grab parts at any place that you can recall.
Not that I can recall.
Now, after January 9th, what was the next time you said that you saw Mr. Butts? Okay, he was not at work on the 10th?
No.
Okay. Do you recall?
I'm never on time.
What time did you come in on the 10th?
Probably about 8:40. I go to the gym, so we open at 8, but I'm never there at 8, so I probably got there maybe 8:49.
Are you the one that opened the shop?
Yes.
Now, you were aware at that time that Mr. Butts was supposed to turn himself in and serve a jail sentence of William County Jail. That's correct?
Yes, I am.
You have to leave the business for a while.
Correct.
And you actually went to the courthouse on the day he turned himself in to support him.
Yes, I was there.
And he was going to be serving time.
That's correct.
If you know.
That's correct.
Okay. And because you were kind of paying attention to what was happening, you understood that the court date had gotten changed a few times.
Yeah, he told me that it had changed. So I believe he's supposed to get sentenced on the 9th, but it I mean, I learned that through him. I didn't go to court with him that time, but just when he got sentenced, I went to court with him that time.
Are you familiar with any court dates that he had out in Clinton Township around that time?
He did say he had something going on with his daughter, I believe. I believe it was domestic with his daughter of some sort. So yeah, I was familiar with that, I believe.
Or is he going to court for that? Now you've been involved because at some point you became aware that the Detroit police wanted to talk to you. Okay, that should took you down.
To headquarters.
Okay, and that was the first time on February 13th, is that right?
That was February.
With again, a couple days later.
Yes, I would believe the first time I spoke with him, I was still on tether, so it had to be sometime after I was yeah.
And then you spoke with him again in March, right?
Yes. No, all of our conversations was via person.
And then a couple weeks ago, did you also?
Yes.
And the prosecutors?
I don't know if the prosecutor, but yes, I believe she was there.
As far as you can remember?
Yes.
Now, in February, when you were talking to the police, by that time, had you seen anything on the news or on social media about who you later learned was Mr. Butts?
Good morning, Grand Rising, Norris.
And at the time that you were talking to the police, while you were untethered.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you had about 3 weeks left on parole at that point.
Not 3 weeks in February.
Yes.
I had 3 weeks left on tether. I got off actual parole in May.
Okay. So the tether was coming off, but you were still going to have to report.
3 more at once.
Okay. And in February, I believe it was the second conversation that you had with a detective, presumably, you and the officer or the detective spoke about the tether, right? Do you recall that?
I believe so, yes.
Because you were concerned every time you would go somewhere, you would be late, you were very.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And in fact, he actually said, hey, we'll take care of you if anything pops up, right?
He said, I'll talk to your PO, so you're fine.
Okay. And he also kind of warned you that you didn't want to get somebody upset about the way you were answering these questions and have somebody feel some kind of way about you. Do you recall him saying that to you?
This is the first conversation or the second you asked
The
about?
second, right at the top of the conversation.
I can't really recall every word. I know we was agitated. I was a little agitated. It was a lot going on. So
It's possible that conversation.
It's possible.
Did you understand any of his statements while you're talking to him? To me, that the police wanted you to give answers, and if you didn't answer, that they could mess with your parole or your tether. It goes to his state of mind.
But he doesn't know what happened.
It's what he believes might happen, and could impact what he said. Was it your understanding that if you didn't give certain answers, that the police might? Tether status? Was that a concern of yours?
Really, you know what I mean? Concerned about how he placed his questions upon me, no. So I mean, more of the concern was my being picked up by the police. Police contact is a violation of parole within itself. So I was violated for the police contact, regardless to whatever he was saying. You get what I mean? So it impacted anything at all, actually.
But your parole wasn't actually revoked. Right?
No.
Now we talked a little bit about this a few minutes ago. Mr. Butts was struggling a few different ways during the time you knew him.
Yes.
And it's hard to keep up with all those baby mamas
I mean, it wasn't my job, so yeah.
and babies that weren't mamas.
Right.
Did you get the impression from Mr. Butts that he didn't want these women to know about each other?
Of course.
My name Tasha was one of Mr. Butts' ladies,
Yes.
and that was one of his baby moms.
Yes. To my belief, yes.
So there was some discussion about a phone call. Butts, while he was at the jail about his phone, right? And after that conversation, Tasha actually came into the shop to get some work done on the car.
Yes, he came to get a oil change in the headlight.
And that's when you went and kind of looked for the phone.
Yes.
Now, you didn't really want Tasha to know that you were looking for the phone, right?
Of course.
And the reason for that was,
She's gonna wonder why I'm looking for a phone.
and was it your impression that Mr. Butts was afraid it would reveal that talking to other women?
Of course.
And so you're trying to help him keep peace?
Of course.
Thanks. I think the testimony was on the night, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was an issue during the day, Mr. had his escalator there, is that correct?
Yes.
And he had run out of gas,
Yes.
and he had to get it. He pushed him to the, or helped push the escalator to a gas pump.
Yes.
Do you recall leaving with him that night and going and getting gas together?
For his truck, or what we saying? Or for like a gas can? What do you?
Well, either one. Do you all leave the shop, and perhaps you in your vehicle and he in his vehicle and at a gas station
No.
on the night?
No.
You don't have any recollection of that?
I don't remember that. No.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Can you redirect?
Okay.
Mr. Wright, you're testifying.
So, what do y'all think? So, not only was Jarvis' sister giving testimony, it was Cordell's baby's mother sister, and then we had Cordell. I want to say later on, I'm gonna come back here and I'll play the grandma that had custody of this young lady. We're going to get her testimony. I want you all to really just pay attention. We're going to follow this case. Like I said, I believe his trial starts on Thursday, January the 16th. And so we'll keep you guys updated on that. As of right now, we have got to go. So long.